Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special Lowdown episode in collaboration with our Bring Our Families Back campaign. This is a campaign powered by the European Union of Jewish Students, the American Jewish Committee, B'nai B'rith International, the Center for Jewish Impact, the European Jewish Congress, the World Jewish Congress, WJC NextGen, and the World Union of Jewish Students. I'm Eryn Sarkin, and I'll be your host today. It's a privilege to be joined by Ayelet Svatitzky. Ayelet is a British Israeli and lived in northern Israel. On October 7th, her life changed. Ayelet's older brother, Royi, was murdered by Hamas terrorists, and her mother, Channah, and older brother, Nadav, were kidnapped from their kibbutz Nirim. After 49 days in Hamas captivity, Channah was released as part of the Israeli hostage Palestinian prisoner swaps. Her brother, Nadav, continues to be held in Gaza. Ayelet, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your experience with us. First and foremost, I would like to ask you, how is your mother Channah doing since her release from Gaza?
So my mom is 79 years old, and she was kept in the tunnels for the entirety of her captivity, so 49 days. She was in hospital for the weekend, and then she came home to stay with us, with me and my family. Physically, she's doing okay. She's gaining the weight that she's lost. She's lost more than 10% of her weight. So she's gaining her weight back and her muscle. She's getting physiotherapy and psychological for the trauma and for the grief and for everything that she's been through. So we're just trying to help her as much as we can. But there's obviously the situation is really still complicated for all of us because he's still a hostage. My mom didn't know that Roy was murdered, so I had to tell her when she got to the hospital the day she was released. So first she had to learn of that, and then she had to learn that Nadav wasn't going to be released in a few days because the deal had the criterias and it was only women and children. So we had to let her know, gently that men weren't part of that deal. So we're just waiting, and praying for Nadav's safe return and hoping that he's hanging in there. The conditions there are horrific and inhumane, and we're just hoping that he survives it and he comes home as quickly as possible.
We're praying for a safe return. Do you have any more information about his condition since October 7th? Have any of the released hostages been able to give you more information, for example, on Nadav's condition?
He was held with my mom. Nadav is diabetic and he has high blood pressure and asthma. He's 51 years old. He's not a young man. So we know that, like my mom, is also lost a lot of weight. They got very, very little food there. Um, so my mom was able to tell us that Nadav lost a lot of weight and he was a thin man to begin with. So we're really worried about that and about his diabetes. And obviously, the air in the tunnels with his asthma is a huge concern to us, and the stress that they're under, on how it affects his blood pressure. So everything scares us. Everything is a concern.
I can imagine. I want to ask you a little bit about Roy, if that's all right with you. In light of these challenging times, have you and your family been able to find space to grieve and honor the memory of Roy? Perhaps you can also share a little bit about him, about who he was.
So Roy was 53, and he lived on the same kibbutz as my mom and Nadav on a different neighborhood. My mom and Nadav were neighbors, and Roy lived in a different neighborhood. And the day of October 7th, in the evening when the army came, his house was empty, so he was presumed missing. Um, and then his body was found the next day next to his house. Roy was single. He wasn't married. He didn't have children like Nadav. So He was a huge animal lover. Always had cats roaming around his house. He used to ride horses when he was younger. He had a black belt in karate, and he was a farmer. He lived quiet, simple lives, always surrounded by animals, working in the fields, in the irrigation, um, coming home in the evening, having a couple of beer bottles, just grabbing a beer, listening to music, sitting with friends, chatting, just a quiet, beautiful life. He was a good man. He was a really, really good man. So, you've asked if we had time to mourn his loss. So the answer is no. Um, as for me, um, once I realized on October 8th that Roy was murdered, I just put that aside. I had to focus on the battle to release my mom and Nadav and all the other hostages. And Roy's death, there was nothing I could do about. I just made sure that his body was recovered from the scene and then taken. And once I knew that had happened, I had to just sit and wait until Israel officially identifies him. So I didn't have much to do about that, just checking in every now and then and making sure that the police is still working. His body was officially identified and released for burial 19 days after October 7th. So it took 3 weeks to have a funeral. Um, Obviously, it was really difficult for me because, like I said, Roy and Nadav weren't married and they didn't have any children. And my dad passed away 19 years ago. So I was the only one remaining here from my side of the family. So I had to bury him alone and sit Shiva and mourn him for the 7 days by myself, which was horrific. and just thinking of all the small details, like making sure that someone films the funeral so that my mom can watch it later when she's back and Nadav can watch it later when he's back. Um, I decided it'll be a temporary burial up in the north next to me. And when the war is over, we can move him to Nirim, for his final rest next to my dad.
I'm curious as to how you are coping. I can imagine it's quite difficult to have to deal with all of these things and also deal with your own emotions and be able to grieve in the way and advocate for your brother. So how are you coping in this current time?
So, very challenging times. I'm 46 years old. I'm married. I'm a mom. I've got 3 teenagers at home. Um, I call myself an absent mom because I might be here in person physically, but emotionally and mentally, I'm mainly focused on the release of Nadav. First, it was mom and Nadav, and now it's Nadav. My mom is here, and so we have to make sure that we help her rehabilitate and find accommodations and solutions. She came here with nothing. We needed to get her clothes. We needed to get housing for her. A lot of things that um, a lot of moving pieces at the same time. And it's been over 100 days. So waking up every morning and just finding the strength to fight for one more day. It's exhausting. It's despairing. Um, and I don't have any other choice. I don't have the privilege of of giving up, of taking a day off. My brother is in the tunnels and he needs us to fight for him. All the hostages needs us to fight for them. So you just find the strength, people ask me where you find it. And I tell them when I wake up every day, I tell myself, but when this all is over, I want to be able to look my mom and my brother in the eye and tell them I've done my very best and I've done all I could. And I want to be able to look at myself and know that I've done everything that I could. So this is what's driving me.
Thank you very much for sharing that. I want to ask you a little bit about your thoughts on the reaction from the international community since the events of October 7th. In Europe, we've seen the posters of the innocent hostages torn down on the streets, calls for jihad and intifada. University campuses have become increasingly hostile, and so on and so forth. So I'm curious as to how you react to this.
So in many cases, we'll see a different reaction from the public and from governments. So we'll see what's happening in the universities across the United States, but the American government is a very good friend to Israel. So I think there's a lot of misunderstanding with the public. And I think that um, the Palestinian side, Hamas side, and Palestinian authorities have been doing a very, very good job for quite a few years uh, in building their agenda, which is sometimes close to the truth and sometimes not even remotely close to the truth. Um, but they've been working in that. And Israel hasn't worked as hard and hasn't replied. And so we got into the war after October 7th with a lot of misinformation out there. People treat social media as if it's checked facts, as if it's the news, as if it's been verified, and there's a lot of information there that hasn't been verified. Emotions are running high. Uh, the other side is very busy in portraying themselves as the victims. And then October 7th is slowly being pushed aside. And people tend to forget what started this war and that Israel did not start it and that it's a war that we didn't really want, but we just can't lose. So I think we hear a lot of people comment on the situation that they just don't understand. You know, the other side saying, go educate yourself. But the fact is that they are uneducated as is into the history of the region, the beginning of this conflict. I mean, we talk about El Aqsa Mosque. What is it built on if not the Jewish temple? So there's just a lot of misinformation that's leading people into holding opinions that aren't necessarily based on facts.
I think that's the media war that a lot of people are speaking about, is this idea of how do you push past what is real and what is not. So yes, I hear what you're saying. Um, our final question for you is, what would your message be for young Jews around Europe who have been unequivocally and will continue to keep on campaigning for the release of the hostages? What would your message to them be?
So first of all, I'll thank you. Your participation, either it's in rallies or if it's hanging posters or posting on social media or even just keeping us in your thoughts and your prayers, it means the world to us, knowing that we're not standing alone. You know, I spoke at the rally at Trafalgar Square last week on the 100 days, and standing there on that stage and seeing the signs, of the crowd standing with Israel and the Israeli flag, and knowing that we have an entire community standing with us and beside us, is a huge support for us. For me personally, it's just massive. So first of all, I want to thank you for that. And just keep doing what you're doing. You know, we see your work, we appreciate it. We can feel your thoughts and your prayers with us. So just keep doing that. And and Israel will win.
And please be assured that Jewish students across Europe will continue to be loud and defiant until all remaining 136 hostages are brought home. We are praying every day for their safe return. And we hope to keep giving platforms to you, to other family members of other hostages, really, because they need to come home now. Thank you very, very much, Ayelet. Thank you.